And as I said, today's special guest is none other than Steve Gillson. And I'm really, really pleased that Steve's is, well, actually, I'm going to let Steve tell his story, and then we'll see as we go along how he's connected to us here at UKCPD. Steve, how are you? Are you well today?
I'm excellent, thank you, Tony. Are you well?
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm brilliant. It's been call after call after call this morning. I'm catching myself on the way back. It's so busy this morning, which is great. Some really, really great interviews. We kind of got back-to-back podcast interviews today. It is a little bit crowded, but it's good. Some very exciting people, including yourself. So for those who don't know you, tell us all about Steve Gillson.
Okay, where do you want me to start? Right back at the beginning or recent?
Yeah, reasonable. Reasonable far back, yeah. More than yesterday.
So I was born in 1977. It all began on a rainy Tuesday evening when Mother Gillson. No. So my background has been predominantly through sales. So I got my first sales job at 12 years old, working in an ironmongery department of an old-fashioned department store. I was cutting keys and I was being shown how to sell at an early age, and that kind of set the tone, I guess, for where I was heading. And I ended up in lots of different kind of job roles, but the overarching theme was sales. So I worked as a sales rep predominantly for builders merchants. So I'd be out cold calling and knocking on doors, and eventually that moved up into management roles, and I was in charge of a team of people in London, and then that ended up as a director's role for Gillson in London, and then eventually that grew into a board level role. So I've seen it from lots of different angles, and marketing has been a flavour that I guess I wasn't really as aware of when I was actually in doing it. I know that sounds crazy, but I wasn't academically trained within that area. But as things progressed, I started taking on more responsibilities, and some of those responsibilities were marketing. And there came a point in 5 years ago, hit a bit of a crossroads and decided I wanted to make a big change. And so we moved to France. And with my family, my wife is French, so that made a bit of sense. But it meant kind of moving away from my career and starting something fresh. And that is what's driven me more into digital marketing than I ever expected to go. So I started doing web design and SEO, and that then led into being invited to teach at the local university, the business school, Excelia. So that really pushed me to broaden and deepen my knowledge within digital marketing. Now, at the same time as this transition into France, and this is the story of how we met, was that I was interested in doing some voluntary work, and I wanted to do some coaching. Background has a flavour of ex-forces in it, so I thought, okay, I could do something to help out that community. So I wanted to do some coaching, and that's how I found the college and your course, wonderful course that it was. So that's how we met. And so I was, I've been able to fulfil that ambition of volunteering. So I work as a business mentor and coach with heropreneurs. And at the same time, I operate independently with my business mindset to marketing.com, which incorporates coaching as well as the marketing knowledge. So, and now that has led to us working together in partnership too. So that's bringing us back full circle. So there's a lot more in between, but that's the potted history, I would say.
Well, great, but you left a big chunk out, and I'm going to mention it and maybe ask a question on it, because you sort of told me the other day, and I thought, bloody hell, that sounds interesting. You were in the military, and it wasn't just any military; it was intelligence. Is that not right?
Yeah, my best mate at the time said I was I going to join as a decoy, so. Which I still find one of the funniest jokes he's ever cracked. But yeah, I ended up in intelligence as a special intelligence analyst.
Yeah, really.
Served 4 years, but
I know you're not going to tell us much about it, but it's kind of exciting. I'm not going to say you're James Bond, but there must be a James in there somewhere. It sounds kind of cool.
I'm sure there's plenty, but no, definitely not. Not something I would align myself towards. But yeah, it was a very rich and valuable experience at an early age. But you know, it was for 4 years, and it was a long time ago. But it does, you know, that kind of involvement does have a lasting impact. I would say, you know, there's stuff that still carries on, friends that you make, and connections and experiences you have, which do shape who you are. The thing I didn't tell you though was probably more interesting is the stuff I did after the army. So I left the army and did quite a lot of solo travel. So I spent about 4 years backpacking around the world, and on that journey, I would say that if anything was the more important in terms of shaping who I am and my values. And that's, I guess, why we've found a connection. You know, I remember our first conversation. You said, "Oh, you say you want to help people a lot," and the truth is, yes, I do. And that's probably driven through some of the bad experiences I've had, I guess, that have now turned into what I believe are the best experiences I've ever had. So it started off with I impaled myself on a metal railing. Yeah, lost my job because I'd left the army. I was doing a very menial job. I was just jet washing cars for £5 an hour, cash in hand. Couldn't get a job. No one was interested in anyone that's come out of the army. It was a different time, and I found myself, I couldn't feed myself. I pretty much hit rock bottom. I was in a mountain of debt, and but I had a breaking point, and it kind of was: do I give up, or do I fight and you know, try and achieve something more? And so I decided that I would, unbeknownst to me at the time, I set forth on a very clear visual dream, I guess, and that was to travel the world. So even though I had a mountain of debt, and we're talking, this is going back quite a number of years, it was around about 10 grand's worth of debt. So crippling in terms of, like, couldn't pay enough to keep my head above water. So it seemed like an impossible goal, but I ended up taking on 3 jobs. I was working 70, 80 hours a week, clambered my way out of that hole. I won a holiday to Australia and a year's supply of Fosters, because it was through Fosters, managing to leapfrog me into travel. And during that, so I got 6 months into that trip, and it was a round the world trip, and I started off in New York, ended up going to Fiji, and then New Zealand, Australia, and I got to Indonesia, and I ended up going blind. So I lost my sight in my left eye. Got medevaced. Yeah, it was not what I was expecting. And yeah, obviously it threw all my plans off. The long story short on that one was I got medevaced. I managed to get back to Bali. I was like on this remote Indonesian island. I managed to get back to Bali to a hospital, and they told me I was never going to see out the eye again, and there were plans to remove the eye and things like that. And I was just completely discombobulated because I was on my own as well. And then eventually got medevaced to Singapore, and I stayed in hospital there for a few weeks. Had some pretty awful treatment, like regular eye injections. Let's just leave it at that in case anyone's squeamish. But some pretty serious stuff to confront. And then I got sort of medevaced back to the UK. You know, I was sort of launched back into my old life, kind of head in a spin, not really knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So that was the second major accident that kind of made me stop and think about life and how I was dealing with it. And then, so I managed to dust myself down a little bit, accepted the fact I'd lost the sight in my eye, but then, and I was at Moorfields Eye Hospital, and they told me again, you know, you've lost the sight. We can keep the eye, but you're not going to see out of it again. Okay, fair enough. Actually, it's quite impressive how your dominant eye overtakes. And so I was like, okay, I can live with this. Then miraculously, 9 months later, my sight started to come back. And so that had a profound impact on me and my belief system too. I mean, it never recovered fully. I've got a heavily scarred cornea, but the fact is, with the use of a specially made contact lens, I've now got my vision back, which is completely bonkers from my point of view. So I dusted myself down, managed to get back into another job and a sales role, and that was all great. Earned a bonus, but I was determined to finish my round the world trip. So I went back out traveling, went back out to Thailand, and then within the space of 3 weeks, I'd had a motorbike accident. I had a near-death experience. I was drowning in Whitewater Rapids. I got rescued out of a river, and it was at that moment I had such a profound experience, because I that's it. My number was up. I literally saw the life. The bit where people say your life flashes before you. Well,
yeah.
I kind of gave up. I knew that was it. It was over, and but I didn't want it to happen. I was keen to survive, and as you are, and miraculously, I got rescued out of this river, and then I got dengue fever, so I was paralysed in my legs, and I couldn't walk. And so at that point, this was all in space of 3 weeks. And this is just literally after coming back out traveling. So I thought maybe I'm not meant to travel.
Yeah, I'm really just a flavour here. Stay at home. It's dangerous.
Yeah, that's been kind of a recurring theme. But so I decided to go back for a bit, to regroup, and but then I did go back out traveling, and thankfully I didn't have any more life-threatening injuries or problems. But those experiences really did shape me and made me stop and think in depth about why they happened, what I was doing, and how I could be a better human. And I think particularly the near-death experience was like, it really gave me this sense of connectivity and an overwhelming love for the world and other people within it. So all I really wanted to do is help people, and that's kind of the bit that has led me to you in some strange ways. That it's through that driving force of wanting to help people that led me to coaching, and now has led me to where I am now. So anyway, I thought I'd just share that bit too, because it's probably more interesting than the army stuff.
Now I understand the beard, you see, because secretly you're just a hippie. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Anybody who's just listening to the audio,
I didn't have the beard at the time.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Anybody who's not listening to, it's just listening to the audio, not the video. Steve's got a very, let's say, mature beard. I'm gonna call it mature. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's been about a year now.
Yeah. Good. Well, fantastic. And we're glad that we did. It's better than mine. So that's what led you to us. As an organisation, you think, I want to do something, and now there's an in-between bit I just want some clarity on. You mentioned Heropreneurs. Have I got that correct? Yeah,
Heropreneurs are an armed forces charity that help. The clue's in the title. The ex-forces, the forces community. So that's spouses as well. That helps them to develop their entrepreneurial dreams by providing mentorship through business mentoring, and there's a group of other mentors that have got a varied experience levels. Some are from startups, and generally we're all ex-forces or got some sort of strong connection. It could be the children of someone within the forces or family member. And so I've got 3 or 4 mentees that I meet up with every month or so, and we go through trying to help them realize their business dreams, whatever they might be, or wherever in the world they might be, because obviously there's a lot of need within the spouse community, because they often get relocated and then they can't work where they were working, and they've got to port their role somehow, so they tend to they sort of more likely to be setting up a smaller business online and things like that. So I've been helping out people with things along those lines.
Really interesting. So, you're helping people set up the business, which is, you did our course, NLP practitioner and coaching certification program. And then we got into a conversation and we were looking for somebody to partner with to help our graduates build their practice and their business. And we got into a conversation and you said, well, actually, this is some of my background. And I thought, wow, it's like heaven sent, because we were looking for somebody and we'd spoken to so many people and a lot of it was snake oil nonsense. Not everybody. There was a couple of really interesting people who we're still in dialogue with, but you really stood up because you were one of us. You were a graduate, a college member. And so you put a program together for us, partnering with college. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about that for anybody who's listening?
Yeah, so I touched on it before. The need for me to set up and start my own online business really drove me to understand in detail about how to create a website, how to I suppose that's the point, right? So I started off thinking I just need to make a website, and then I realized that actually that's all great, but if your website doesn't get found, you're wasting your time. So that led me to learn about SEO, and then I started to realize, well, actually I need to know a bit more about how to market myself online, and so from that point, really, there was so much that I realized I needed to become more resourced within and more skilled within that in order to run an online business. That I developed those skills, and I spent the time learning how to be better at those things. And as I said, I got then this opportunity to teach, which really made me go deeper and wider in those subjects in order to be able to teach them efficiently and proficiently, I should say. So as a result of all that, I felt like I've got a really good broad understanding of what needs to happen, but more importantly, to be able to cut through the confusion, because the digital world is just, anyone who's been on a computer recently just realizes there's just a ton of information. The acceleration of technology is hard to keep a handle on with artificial intelligence and things like that, and all the different software platforms. So I felt like there was a good opportunity to help people try to cut out the noise, break down that overwhelm, because I could see a lot of people starting and then giving up on their dream of setting up an online practice or business, because they're just overwhelmed by too much choice and not enough skill set. So the course has evolved in terms of moving slightly away from the more theoretical approach that I apply at university, but something much more practical and something a lot more watered down in terms of like practical skills. What can I comfortably put to one side and block out? And what do I really need to focus on in order to take action to get this business going? And so that's where we come up with the idea of the Coaches Growth Club. It's really a way of breaking all that down into bite-sized chunks that are appealing to the intermediate and the more advanced user, but also to the beginner and the one that hasn't even set up a business, let alone an online business or done anything in terms of digital marketing or sales or anything like that. So it's really an overarching set of tools that should appeal to most people, and even in fact beyond coaches, anyone who's setting up any kind of online business, this is all applicable to them too.
Yeah, I think so. And I was thinking about it the other day. Your coach, NLP practitioner, maybe a therapist or a trainer or anybody really who's got a small business, could be a massage therapist, anything. You want to get your name out there and get noticed and start to build your presence and your business. So that's kind of, I guess, the focus. And so it's 12 core modules, 12 core themes and modules spread out over 3 months. And in between that, we've got, I know you love this, campfires and guest speakers and various other different things happening. Tell anybody who's listening, you think, I get 12 core focus modules over 3 months. Campfires, just explain a little bit more about that. Just for anybody who's kind of thinking, well, that sounds interesting.
So during the course of my learning, I paid particular attention to people that have run online communities, and so listening to podcasts and things like that, I realized what do you need to do in order to stop it from just being a course as opposed to a community. And so the theory around what I called the coach's campfire was really just that that sense of collaboration and sharing and growing together. So the idea would be that every week there's an hour space for people to show up if they want to share their wins and successes, as well as maybe their struggles. The community that are there, I haven't got all the answers. I try to provide them, but this is very much about facilitating an opportunity to connect with other people who've got different skill sets. It could be a case of meeting up with someone to find an accountability partner. Maybe that's something you feel you need. I find that that's particularly useful for me. I meet up regularly with peers to keep me on track and to help them stay on track. So it's very much around sharing knowledge, sharing wins and losses, and feeling like you're not alone. And that was again partly driven through the course that I did with you, Tony. It was, we created a nice network of people that I still communicate with almost daily, and it's through that level of support. And even on a practical level, you can't get away from the fact at some point, if you're going to be trying to grow a business online, you need a community of people that are supporting you around. So if you're creating any kind of digital content, you find that your group, they're your supporters, they're your fan club, and you each support and share and comment on posts, and that helps you beat the algorithm and get through to the people that don't know you yet. So it's not only helpful and supporting, it's also very useful and practical too. So yeah, the concept is very much, it might sound a bit icky to some, but I had to give it a name. But it's just that feeling of turn up, sit down and let's have a chat. It's not so much about practical learning or workshop. That's for like you say, the weekly core sessions that are also going to be punctuated with a specialist session each week. So each week there'll be a core module. Each week there'll be a specialist session, which is more a deep dive to appeal to the people that have either want to know more, say if it's a deep dive into how to grow on LinkedIn, or it could be learning about how to set up a podcast. But it could be something a little bit more advanced, something to do with SEO. Say you've been, you're a little bit further down the road. You've been running your business for a couple of years, but you just want to increase and how to do that. So there'll be stuff for everybody really, but there'll be 3 sessions a week. So there's one core module, one specialist module, and then the campfire.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, having looked at the whole, we've gone over it a few times now, it's so much information, it's so rich, and it's so content dense. It's extraordinarily powerful. And, I look back at my sort of 27 years now as a coach and then as a trainer. If I'd had some of this information back then, I think I'd be a billionaire by now, because back then there was none of that. And, I had a website, when I had one, but we didn't have one before. There weren't websites. That's how long I've been around. But it's fairly basic. And of course, you could probably count the websites that were applicable on a couple of hands, whereas now there's lots of websites. So all of that stuff about getting seen and having your avatar and you're clear about your message to your client, all of that kind of stuff is super, super important. And I guess I was thinking, well, we'll say, so it's 70 quid a month to join. It's a rolling membership, 70 quid a month. And we worked out that it was £2.23, which is less than a cup of coffee in one of the high street coffee shops. So it's nothing compared to the value that has been provided by the group. Did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I think the other thing is just like I said, some of my values are around having an ethical approach to marketing. So I want that to come across too, in terms of this is designed to be risk-free, in sense of if you don't like it, that's fine. You're not bound by any time limit or contract. It's dead easy. You just quit. And I see it as my challenge to make it engaging enough and interesting enough and resourceful enough to keep you interested and to keep you finding value within it. So just really wanted to add that it's a risk-free option, and I can guarantee that it's worth 70 quid for the amount. If you turn up to every session, then you're going to get your value for money.
It's worth way more than that, let's be honest. Great. Okay. So anybody watching the video or listening to this, we're going to put the links to all of that in the show notes, so you won't have any difficulty finding it. Now, Steve, we ask all of our people that we have on the podcast the following 3 questions. So are you ready? Because these are very, very important. Now, the last podcast person had first thing this morning, I asked for his favorite personal development book, and he ended up giving me 4 or 5. There was no stopping him. So, oh, wow.
Really?
No, I know. So, and I hadn't heard of some of the books, and that was interesting. And I live in a library. So your favorite personal development book?
So my favorite personal development book, it's now you've asked me again, it's more debatable, but I'd say The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, even though that originally put me off the title, but once I read it, and again that was a book recommendation from the course, I really saw how many things I'd learned through the NLP and coaching were derivatives of the messages that were coming out there. I particularly liked the section on principles and how you guide yourself through principles, because as I've alluded to, that's something that I find very close to my heart, and I suppose that resonated with me in particular. So there's so much useful stuff in there. I'm not saying everything is exactly what you need to thrive and to do well, but you'd be hard pushed to find a better example of a model.
I agree. I'm forever quoting it. Covey in particular, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Successful People. I recommend it 100%. It is a life-changing book if you apply some of the principles, especially sharpen the saw. Benefits of personal and professional development. Okay, favorite coaching or NLP model?
Yeah, I think the one that I always come back to is A Process.
All right.
I think I like in particular the dive into. I just find it's like everybody, you have something that works for you, and I just find it the most fluid, and I like the focus on resources, the fact that it's all well and good having an intention and a strong intention, but you've really got to look ahead down the line and see what you're going to need in order to fulfill the goal. And I like the exploration in terms of understanding what's there to give confidence, but what's not there, and to be honest about that at the beginning so you can do something about it. You don't get tripped up further down the line. So yeah, I'm a fan of A Process.
Well, that's interesting. So for people who are not familiar with this A Process model, my mentor many 30 plus years ago now, I'm guessing, taught me that, well, a version of it, and we've kind of developed and changed it, I guess, over the years to what we now deliver on our program. So that's interesting. You picked that one. Really, really good. Favorite motivational or inspirational quote, if in fact you have one?
Yeah, I do. I do like quotes, and one that sticks with me at the moment is wherever your fear is, there is your task, or where your fear is, there is your task, by Carl Jung. That one resonates with me. It's always something I've challenged myself on to overcome, whether it's heights, my fear of heights, tackled all that head on, performing live, all these things. And more recently, because I didn't tell you that one either, did I, Tony? I used to be a one-man acoustic blues band.
There's no way.
Yeah.
A one-man band, blues music.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I decided I wanted to play the guitar quite late. I didn't really pick it up properly. I always had a guitar around, but never did anything with it. And then at 27, I decided, right, that's it. I'm going to do this. and I'm going to play enough to be able to write my own music and sit in a pub and make people dance and sing. That was my goal. Nothing more, nothing less. And I managed it. So as I started playing, I realised I needed a bit of a backup, and I started tapping my foot as I was playing the guitar. And then I thought, I may as well put a cymbal under that. And then I was like, well, actually, may as well put a hi-hat under that, or maybe put a bass drum under the other one. And I realised, and I played harmonica as well. So I started putting the harmonica on the rack, and then before I knew it, I was singing my own songs, playing along, and and so I did. Yeah, I did many a gig in London. I used to get the nickname, what was it, Gigatron, because I used to do or something like that. I used to work for this agency where they're called bar bands, and you basically play for nothing, set up in a pub in London and just go for it. And there'd be like 3 or 4 people in there. They preyed on the fact that you were an aspiring musician, and you'd be on that circuit until you could get enough of a following to start getting some paid stuff. So I did a lot of that. So I just literally have to turn up in a corner of a pub, often with a really underwhelming PA, and entertain people. And a lot of the time you're just getting ignored or brushed past and not. But sometimes, and that was always the challenge. Like, can I grab this crowd and can I get them up and singing and dancing? And it was tough. It was blinking hard. I won't make out it wasn't anything, but it was a good experience, and I had a wonderful time doing it, and had some success. I got a residency up at the Edinburgh Fringe once. That was and I did do some paid stuff, and I even ended up. So there's another story. I even ended up on the bill at Glastonbury. I was on
hold the phone.
In a viral video. I was in a viral video that got 659,000 views. I was on MTV, all sorts of things, but none of it. It all sounds so much better than it actually was. I was a bit part. I was like this tiny little element of it, but I was riding the coattails of other people's success. It wasn't all solo stuff. I was joining bands, playing harmonica and stuff. So, but it was a fun ride.
Wow,
that's good.
So you could have been like Ed Sheeran. You just went traveling instead.
Well, funny you should mention that. I was actually on the same lineup as Ed Sheeran. So he was doing the same thing as me. So there was lots of people doing open mic nights and stuff. And it was at the same time when he was. So there was this one girl, Jess, who used to organise these open mic nights, and Ed Sheeran was. Yeah, I wasn't actually on the same night as him, but I knew that he was doing it because when he got famous, she started posting stuff on Facebook, and so we didn't actually cross paths directly. But I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's quite amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
a full,
good for him.
Well-lived life by the sounds of it.
Got to cram it in.
Yeah, I'll say. And now we're cramming it in with all this training and supporting other people to develop their business, which is super important, because if there's one thing, the word of the moment in the United Kingdom is growth. Be it something small or even an airport runway at Heathrow. Who knows? But growth. So all of it will matter, I'm quite sure. Steve, it's been brilliant having you on for the podcast. I really appreciate it. I'll put the link to both yourself and to obviously the program in the show notes. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Nothing strikes me, no, other than to say thank you for having me, and onwards and upwards. It's
onwards and upwards.
Don't hesitate if you have any questions, or if anyone wants to get hold of me. You can see you've got my Instagram handle there under my name, so that's at Steve_Gillson. That's with 2 L's X. So happy to answer any questions about the Coaches Growth Club, and to try and give you some confidence, whether it's for you or not. But get in touch, or with Tony. I'm sure you can also field any questions if you in touch with him already. But look forward to starting really. So we're kicking off on the 12th of February.
That's right.
And
First big
I will see somebody
12th
there.
February. Onwards and upwards from there. So if you're listening, be sure to get in touch if you got any questions or get registered. It's all happening on the 12th. Steve, thanks very much. And we'll speak again very, very soon. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye, Tony.